Hello ladies and gents, how on a day? In today's video, we're reviewing Gaslight, a crime fiction novel by Femi Kayode. The book is set in Nigeria, where a popular bishop has been arrested for the murder of his wife. And unlike Femi's debut novel, Light Seekers, which was based on a true life story, this book is entirely fictional. Or at least that's what we're told. If I could describe today's book in one word, it would be deeply unsettling. And no, not for the reasons you'd expect from a mystery thriller. But we'll get into all of that shortly. Gaslight is by far one of the most original African crime novels I've read, and it gave me a lot of mixed feelings, especially about Sade, the book's central character. The book itself isn't a long read. I think I finished it in about 3 days, and that's mostly because I only had time to read during my commute to work. But fair warning, there will be spoilers in this review. So if you haven't read the book yet and you don't want spoilers, go and read the book. I'm going to be breaking this review into 4 parts. First, we'll go through the full story. Then we'll talk about the major themes, discuss the characters, and finally, I'll read you some of my favorite scenes from the book. Alright, without wasting any more time, let's begin. Our book starts off with a missing person, Sade Daodu, also known as the First Lady. She's the wife of the Bishop, Jeremiah, who is also the pastor of Graceland, a mega church which has branches all over the world. Sade also happens to be Kenny's friend, who is the sister of our lead character, Detective Philip Taiwo. Now, her disappearance sets the premise for the entire book because it just so happens that a public arrest is made and Sade's husband, the bishop, is taken into custody. Why? Because according to the police, and I'm quoting, they have irrefutable evidence that he killed his wife. Now, our lead character, Taiwo, is a forensic psychologist who the church hires based on Kenny's recommendation to prove their bishop's innocence. And because we already know that the police don't have a great track record of solving mysteries, Kenny tries to convince Taiwo to take up the case, despite knowing that he's not really a fan of organized religion. But her church needs answers, like everybody believes that she's not dead, that she's just missing, that she's gone on a vacation. And like the police are so sure that the bishop is responsible. And so they need answers and they need it soon. Now, if you've watched an unhealthy amount of crime documentaries like I have, you would know that the spouse of the victim is almost always the first suspect. Philip knows this too, and this is why he pushes to interview Jeremiah as soon as possible. However, their meeting leaves him confused. The bishop doesn't react the way Philip expects a husband accused of making his wife disappear to react. What's even more concerning about this is that he's not the only one. Everyone in this book, including Sade's mother, is strangely indifferent about the news of her disappearance. In the scene where Taiwo first meets everybody who are like the elders of the church, Sade's mother says that she doesn't know why they have to go so far. She's like, oh, you guys are like stressing over this. Like, Sade is going to come back. Like, she always comes back. And like, this makes it obvious that this isn't the first time she's vanished. Sade is portrayed as a young, unhappy, emotionally fragile wife who struggles with the pressures of her husband's ministry. Like, she's constantly living in his shadow. And from the vibe we get, the congregation doesn't really like her that much. According to Kenny and Pastor George, aka Deputy Jesus, she occasionally vanishes to cope with the stress of ministry. But Philip suspects there's more to this story, so he decides to visit the crime scene to get some answers. But his visit leaves him with even more questions than answers. Now, it doesn't take long for him to discover that the police's so-called irrefutable evidence is nothing more than a setup. Like, bro, the crime scene has been staged, exposing not only the fact that they don't know anything about investigation, but they've made a very big blunder. And with their case falling apart, they can't afford to keep a very powerful man like Bishop Jeremiah in custody. So he's immediately released. At this point, the police are desperate to fix their mistake because, as I've already mentioned, they're not exactly expiring confidence. If the evidence against the bishop was staged though, who set him up and why? Was Sade involved? Or was someone else pulling the strings? Philip believes that Sade has the answers. However, he can't seem to understand why she would want to frame her husband. But before he can get any closer to the truth, he's forced to let go of the case because everyone keeps insisting that Sade will return just as she always does. That is until she's found dead. Her body is abandoned in a lagoon, and just like that, the story takes a much darker turn. Her death unravels so many dark secrets within Graceland about her marriage and about her past. Philip and his partner Chika, and if you don't know Chika, you have to read the book. I can't do enough justice to him here. Uncover 4 major revelations about Graceland and Sade. 1. The church is being used as a cover for money laundering and drug trafficking, helping many high-profile figures to move money abroad. 2. Sade had a lover before she died, who knew exactly where she was the night she went missing. 3. Someone inside the police force is actively lying about what they know. And 4, and this one had me, right? This one really had me. Sade had gotten her tubes tied. So when Philip went to interview the bishop, right, that's Jeremiah, he was saying that one of the reasons why she always has to go on these vacations is that she's like depressed because she can't have children. They've been married for 5 years, but she's not able to have children. And as it turns out, they're not being able to have children is not because she's depressed. It's because she got her tubes tied, which was so crazy. And so it just rendered everything he said about that narrative about her not being able to have children as like dead on arrival. And like when he finds out about the news, because he didn't know before, he's like furious. He's extremely angry. He's so pissed that he tells the police that they should remove it from their report. But like everyone is like, why? I thought you said you knew your wife. But this is where things really start to heat up, right? So there was this guy, his name was Victor Ewang, who had been helping like Philip and Chika with the investigation. A week after he comes forward with information about the church's money laundering activities, his dead body is dumped in Philip's backyard with a note attached to him that says, "Talk and you're next." I can't lie to you, this part was very unbelievable for me. And at this point, like any reasonable person would have stepped back. But Philip is not that man. He's not this person. He takes his wife Folake and their 3 children to Chika's house and drives straight to Graceland to confront the bishop. But this also almost gets him killed. And luckily for him, Chika is there to save the day. And then there's Collins, Sade's lover, right? He was devastated by her death so much that even when Philip and Chika visit him to try to like get him to talk and testify, he says that he was afraid to come out because the night that Sade disappeared, they were together. And by the time he woke up the next morning, she had gone, leaving 2 critical pieces of evidence behind: her phone and a note. Now, Collins had one mission in this book, which was to honor Sade and expose everything the bishop had put her through. And he delivers on that beautifully. Like, so on a Sunday morning in front of the entire congregation, after they've sang all the hymns and everybody's full of the spirit, he plays a video. And we're not explicitly told what's on the video, but the reaction of the church says enough. Like, whatever it showed had been Sade's reality for 5 years before she died. And like I had an inkling, like we get to infer based on what the author writes that Sade had been sexually molested by not just 1 or 2, but a group of associate pastors in the church. So the bishop had called it like a deliverance, because he said, okay, so let me give you a bit of backstory before I go that far. So Sade had gotten an abortion when she was younger, right? For a guy, she was young, she was in love, and she had made a mistake. And so when she got married to the bishop, because she didn't want to keep that past of herself, like she didn't want to lie, she had opened up to him about it. And that just became like her worst mistake ever, because he continued to use it against her for the 5 years they were married. And then there's Detective Bello, who was the insider in the police force. So when I got halfway through the book, I had my suspicions that he might be the one, because there was just something about how he was personally taking this case that didn't sit right with me. Either he knew her or he was protecting someone. And turns out I was right. He and Sade were friends and classmates before she married the bishop. There is this line that Chika says during their investigation that really stuck with me. He says that God's business is good business. And this line perfectly captures the book's view of organized religion and how it is used as a tool sometimes by religious leaders to wield wealth and power at the expense of their congregation. And while what we think we see, like what is behind that, may not always be the Holy Spirit. But what really had my blood boiling throughout all of this was that the bishop's so-called business manager, right? So the bishop had a business manager who was not in Nigeria. She was abroad, and she handled all the dealings, all the church tithes and all of that. Allegedly, she was handling the church's finances. But it turns out that she was his ex-wife. Like, this man had convinced everyone that he had never been married before he married Sade, which was a pretty bold lie to make for a 52-year-old man. Now let's talk about the ending. I will say the ending is not very satisfying. The case is ruled as a suicide, and while I knew going in that this wasn't going to be a very neat every villain gets justice kind of ending, I at least expected the bishop to face some sort of legal consequence. Instead, he's exposed but evades justice entirely and disappears into hiding, never to be seen again in the book. And as frustrating as that sounds, it is also the most honest thing about this book, because this is just the reality of many domestic abuse cases in Nigeria. Time and time again, we've seen the system fail. We've seen the powerful use their resources, use their means, use their connections to be able to walk free after committing terrible crimes. And the people who suffer most from it are left without justice, are left without closure, and sometimes they're even accused of being called liars. Let's talk about themes. So one of the themes I want to be discussing today is colorism, and that's basically where people of the same race are being discriminating, or they're being prejudiced because someone is of a different skin color than they are. It's like racism, but like among people of the same race. So Taiwo's family is brought into focus, especially his daughter Lara, who she's going through puberty at this time, and because they've just moved from America to live in Nigeria, she is going through what it's like to be a young black girl in Africa, but not be the pretty type of black. So she's being bullied in school, and everybody keeps calling her names like Blackie. And like when her dad discovers that she had bought a box of bleaching creams so that she could be lighter, right? They have this really hard conversation between father and daughter. And like this subplot really hit home for me. Colorism has been a ongoing problem in Nigeria. Like the beauty industry specifically has exploded over the last few years, selling bleaching creams, selling skincare with the aim of helping you to lighten your skin tone. And like it is a very real thing that sometimes I've experienced this too, that sometimes just because you're lighter, I guess you have a very light skin tone, you get treated better. or you are being given some pretty privileges that you may not necessarily get if you are of a darker skin tone. Another thing that the author writes about, which is very important, is religious narcissism. Religious narcissism is a very twisted way of weaponizing the gospel, weaponizing people's faith, and using their belief to manipulate, control, or emotionally abuse them. Religious narcissists are really good at gaslighting, and they tend to equate their personal opinion with God's will, framing any disagreement as a sin. Right? So if you've ever been to a church where the pastor's word is law and people don't really have a say in the church, and you cannot air any disagreements you have, or maybe you have opinions that are not so favorable, you may or may not be dealing with a religious narcissist. And if you're not religious, or if you don't go to church, or you're not spiritual, this may not apply to you. Right? You may not have noticed this pattern. But if you grew up with very religious parents, sometimes they can also be religious narcissists. I'm very grateful that my parents were not too religious, if that's the right word I should use. They always tend to balance being realistic and being spiritual, and they did their best, to be honest. But yes, religious narcissists are people like Bishop Jeremiah. Simply, so he preyed on his congregation's hope and trust in him, up until the point where the church became spiritually toxic. Like the elders, Kenny, and even Sade's mother had been so infected by this toxicity that any truth that wasn't Jeremiah's truth was met with resistance and illogical notions. And Taiwo and Chika, they could really see through this because they were not under his spell, they were not his church members. And this put a target on their back because the bishop did try to kill them. And I know that this book is fiction, but religious narcissism isn't as uncommon as you would think. I also think that in Africa, it is more common, just because okay, so I don't want to generalize, but in Nigeria it is more common just because we are very religious people. You are not as a Nigerian, you have a religion. It's either you're a Christian or you're a Muslim. Atheists don't really get recognized here, agnostics as well. I think now with the younger generation, they tend to be more vocal about it. But if you're filling a form in Nigeria, you're either Christian or you're Muslim. Those are your options. Choose. I just want to say that no matter how much faith you have, faith should not blind you to the truth. And there's a scene in the book where Kenny herself says this, that truth should always come before religion, and that is what I believe as well. Interestingly, the author validates this in an interview with Bloomsbury. So where he talked about the book, he talked about what had really made him think about Gaslight and how he came up with the title. And I've included the link in the description below if you want to check out his interview. He believes that organized religion has come to make people accept a lot of things that could easily be proven to be false. And this is because these religious leaders have a very good talent of gaslighting people. And while this book doesn't really focus on the crime itself, I think the book tries to walk us through and uncover the extent of corruption and the extent of manipulation that goes on behind the scenes in religious settings, in organized religion, up until the point where you do not even know that you've been gaslit until you're too deep in. So my 3 favorite characters and my not so favorite characters. So I'll be talking about my favorite characters first. Number 3 on my list is Chika, and that's just because he is that man. Like, he is the brains and the bronze of this investigation. Like, Philip is definitely the lead, but Chika is just so good at being his assistant. Like, I love his character so much. He's a very strong, straightforward, and caring character. Like, he knows how to do the dirty work. He knows how to find leads. He knows how to protect his family. And I just wish he got more like lines in the book. The second character I really love is Sade, and although she's not a very present character in the book, I love how the author portrays her grief, and I'm very contented with the choices she made throughout the book. I love how she rises up to her biggest up, which is her husband, and how she decides not to let everything she had gone through in her marriage define her, even up until the point where she decides to take her own life. And number 1 on my list, I don't know if you can guess it. Okay, I'll tell you. It is Taiwo's wife, Folake. And I know like Folake is just like a side character, but she is a very underrated character in the book. I love how she was able to take control of the situation when their house was vandalized. Like, you should really read that scene where she has an interview with the police, and like, because she's a lawyer, right, they're trying to ask Taiwo so many questions about what happens, and then she's answering him, and then the police officer goes, Taiwo, could you tell your wife to sit back and let us ask you the questions? He now goes, well, nobody tells my wife what to do. And like, God, I beg. I love how she found a way to boost Lara's confidence and help her face her bullies at school without being like an overbearing mom. I also like how she's very understanding of Philip's life-threatening missions. Now, moving on to my not so favorite characters. Number 3 on my list would be Detective Bello. And it's just because he wasted our time in the book by hiding the truth and not coming clean. If they had like just had the conversation earlier, I believe that would have been saved some chapters in this book. He let his apprehension get the better of him. And I know that it was because I was working for the bishop at the time, but he could see how dedicated Taiwo was to solving this case, and I believe that they would have had a much better relationship had it been there were not so many misunderstandings. Number 2 on my hall of hate is Sade's mother, Kemi. That woman was a disappointment to me. Like, I couldn't believe that she would side with her son-in-law over her daughter. And like, even when your daughter had opened up to you and she had come crying and telling you just how difficult her marriage was, like, your first advice to her was that she should endure. Like, I didn't really understand, and I really hope that nobody's mom is like this. But like, why would you choose a man you don't even know over your own child when she's being very vulnerable about her marriage situation to you, knowing where you've come from and knowing your own like backstory with marriage? I did not feel any sympathy towards this woman, especially after like she broke down knowing that her daughter had died. Like, I wish she hadn't turned a blind eye, and I believe she does take up some responsibility for the eventual end of Sade. And number 1 on my list is the bishop, Jeremiah Daudu. I detested this man. Like, he was disgusting. I was so irritated by him. I don't know how somebody can delude themselves to the point where they think that gaslighting and manipulating people is the will of God. And he was selfish, he was obtuse, and the author does a very good job of making him passionately hated throughout the book. I wish he got the justice he deserved, but we all can't have what we want, and I guess that's fine. Okay, so my first favorite scene in this book is where Pastor George and Taiwo have a heart-to-heart conversation about the things happening in the church, and the pastor like finally is honest about what is going on. So I'm just going to read it. And it says, I've been a pastor here for 13 years, since the first church was planted in Lagos. I rose to become his right-hand man, and in all those years, I never questioned him. I studied the word, not with my heart, but through his eyes. Until now? Asked Taiwo. George smiles. The higher I rose, the more I found my path. It became clear that I had to have my own voice and listen to God rather than the bishop. Is there a difference? And this is Taiwo asking now. The way he looks at me The way he looks at me momentarily vulnerable makes me reconsider my initial impression. Maybe he's not arrogant. Maybe he's just searching and hiding his doubts better than most. Man is not God. Perhaps Pastor George is one of the few in the God business coming to terms with this truism. And so my last favorite scene is by Sade, where she writes a letter to Collins. That is the note she left behind. And so I'm just going to read that. And she says, I have told you to give your grief purpose and not waste it. I hope you have. Some things will not go according to plan, but I must trust that you will improvise. You will have to. When you look back on all you have done to give my death purpose, I hope you will find it in your heart to forgive me, as I have forgiven you for all the years of pushing me, bending me, and shaping me into a version of what you believed your God wanted. Because when all is said and done, I was many things on my journey. To the person writing you this, some I kept, others I lost, but through it all, I was always my mother's daughter. Overall, I'd rate this book a 7 over 10. It's an easy read, and I really enjoyed the dual narrative throughout the story because it gives Sade some much needed spotlight, even though she's absent for most of the novel. The author does a great job of educating readers about the life in Nigeria, its culture, politics, and some social realities without over-explaining things or relying on terrible metaphors. I liked that every character's appearance in the book wasn't spontaneous or irrelevant, and the plot development for me was a 10 over 10. That said, there are still some things that didn't sit right with me. The book discusses some really heavy themes, some of which we never get closure on. The mega church was never properly investigated, and Daudu is still on the run. I'm honestly not happy with how Sade died. The author touches on misogyny a bit, but that thread is never followed through in the book. Aside from these, I think Kayode did a really good job. I genuinely enjoyed Gaslight. If you're someone who loves thrillers, crime fiction, true life crimes, and stories with a message, I humbly recommend that you read Gaslight. One thing is certain, if Femi writes more books in the future, I will be there like mad. I hope you enjoyed listening to this review as much as I enjoyed talking about it. If you enjoyed watching this video, please do the things you would do when you like a video. And consider subscribing so the algorithm recommends more of my videos. You can also watch another one that should pop up on your screen right about now. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and stay blessed. Bye.